forms of Godzilla are often highly talked about in regards to how powerful they are in comparison to one another and in comparison to other titans. So how about we talk about one of the most controversial titans in terms of how they stack up to their pleasant enemies, Godzilla 2021. So for this, we're gonna go through not only the Dominion comic, but through the film itself, and essentially look through the statements, the feats, etc., and how he compares to other titans. So let's just start with Dominion, since it is a direct prequel to GvK, and it takes place in 2021, essentially 3 years before the film itself. Dominion is a vastly weaker version of Godzilla, constantly said to be barely alive, starving, tired, etc., so on and so forth. And he's so weak, even things like missiles, like sear and burn into his flesh, when, for very obvious reasons, not only before this, but after this, he takes missiles with way better reaction. Unless it's like an off guard towards its gills or something, in which still he seems to give less of a reaction. And we also know that he lost the nuke/thermo amp. He did not retain the energy from Mothra or the nuke in terms of power, however he gained some new abilities, which I'll mention later. The comic starts off with his clash against Scylla, who, while she can harm Godzilla, is ultimately overpowered pretty easily. A simple tail slaps and Scylla flying, and she kind of flees away. I mean, also that Scylla is faster than Godzilla, at least it's Godzilla in water. And Scylla, according to the GvK opening, which Adam thinks is fine and is canon, is on the same tier as the Queen Muto. However, feats-wise, due to the Queen Muto being above male and female, Queen Muto is probably above. And then we get to Amaluk, a titan who was beating up Behemoth in that same scene, who, once again with a single kick, can send Amaluk flying. And then after the single kick from Godzilla, Amaluk just submits. Now, I wouldn't say the statement of Amaluk being Kong level refers to actual power, but if you want to say Amaluk is Kong level, then more power to you, I guess, and more upscaling for Godzilla. Next, Godzilla takes a nice summer swim, essentially training his perfect summer body before he gets rudely interrupted by a fat fucking fish who has no name, but we shall name Karen. Godzilla disposes of the fish and moves along before saving tentacle hentai from humans. This is when we learn about some of Godzilla's new abilities he obtained from Mothra as well, which include things such as thermal vision, seeing while blind, and can essentially see and command the Titans all at once. He essentially has accessory perception, whatever the fuck it's called. We then learn of the fraud, the rival, someone who ganged up on Godzilla, still with a pacifier in his mouth, and then jumped him.
Like his one place is blown up, so he's thinking, oh, but there was this place when I was really young, or younger anyway, that I got driven out of. So in that particular storyline, if it's not clear, what happened was a Kong or several Kong pushed him out of there when he was younger and weaker, and then Tiamat comes along, kills him, kills the Kong, and so when he comes back, he's looking to face a Kong, but instead he ends up facing Tiamat.
However, as we see via the scars, the rival still struggled, even with help, and even on essentially a baby Godzilla who just is still in his crib. Anyways, we then learn this weakened Godzilla feels competent enough to go face the rival, even knowing his own state and injuries. However, before he realized that, the layer wasn't his own anymore. As he realizes, Tiamat then ambushes him. And while Godzilla is definitely trying more, while Scylla and Amaluk, he wasn't trying as much, and Tiamat is the stronger Titan compared to the two, as well as Tiamat being the one that killed the rival outright. He even does give Godzilla a lot of trouble, kind of slashing into him. However, it is mentioned that Godzilla is still the stronger of the two, and he eventually wins and makes Tiamat kind of flee. At the end of the comic, he essentially calls all the Titans and makes them rest, still showing that he is the alpha at the time, which statements do back up. Now at this post-G2019 time, that he is the strongest Titan alive, and no one can really challenge him, since there's nothing like Ghidorah or Shimo. There's nothing really on the same tier of power as him. And then he goes into a 3-year rest period. And then now moving on to GvK itself in 2024.
You see, 10 years ago, when Godzilla was first revealed to the world,
something to essentially cover is statements that say he's quote-unquote stronger than ever, stronger than 2019, etc., and the fact that people seem to think he kept the energy for some fucking reason, which is just promo material that has no weight in the actual movie, as we'll get through in a minute, and it doesn't reflect actual scaling. If you believe the promo material, then you believe shit that Mecha is the strongest Titan, which, as I'll get into later, isn't the case. This, once again, is backed up by Godzilla, according to the novel, is still battered and wounded and is only forced awake by Apex's building of Mechagodzilla, and according to the novel, only got the half of his rest needed to actually recover, obviously putting him in a weakened state. Then, before the film's events, we learn that he is doing off-screen in the shit in the ocean, most likely going after Apex facilities, which tires him out more even before the film begins.
I mean, Godzilla's pretty tired. I mean, he hasn't had a chance to really slow down this entire movie. I mean, presumably he's been swimming around and, you know, going nuts in the ocean when he's not on screen. And so when Mechagodzilla comes out, they just...
And as mentioned before, we know during this post King of the Monsters time that he is the strongest thing alive and no one else can really challenge him. He is just the most powerful creature outright. And, like, it makes sense. There's nothing, like, once again, there's nothing really on a Ghidorah or Shimu levels of power that can really challenge him. The strongest things alive at the time are, like, Rodan, Kong, eventually Mecha, like the Queen Muto too. But obviously, they're not above Godzilla, and obviously we'll get into Kong a bit more later. And this is backed up by the opening of the film itself. And we also know via the opening he has the ability to absorb energy from other Titans. And then we go on to the first fight of Godzilla vs. Kong. We know by Godzilla's smile in the fight and by Adam's statement that he is holding back in this fight.
And maybe this is going to be controversial, but I don't think Godzilla is ever afraid that for a second he's going to lose any of these fights. I think that he's playing with Kong. I think that, you know, it's life and death for Kong. Kong's trying to, you know, stay afloat, but trying to stay alive. But, you know, at the end of the day, Godzilla's Godzilla. I mean, you can't kill Godzilla, basically. I mean, Godzilla's on the ocean. I mean, look at him. He's, like, smiling here. Like, right? He's having fun. Kong is not having fun. This scene, Godzilla's having fun. I mean, like, he's not really worried about losing. He's really not. I mean, I know maybe it seems like he is at certain parts. He's got something to do. He's here to go get Mechagodzilla and take him out. Oh, by the way, you know, Godzilla's not worried about Kong. He's just having fun. You know, like he's here to get Mechagodzilla. He knows that Mechagodzilla is the threat. He maybe doesn't know what Mechagodzilla is, but he knows that there's something here that he's got to kill.
It's almost like a foregone conclusion to a certain degree that Godzilla is going to win. But the real question is Kong going to survive? And so, you know, Godzilla kind of gets the upper hand pretty quickly. And again, this kind of goes back to my whole thing, which is Godzilla knows he's going to win. He's like, okay, I'm getting done. You know, the difference is now is Godzilla's really pissed off. He got hit in the face with that axe and he's like, I'm over this. That's why Godzilla fights a little dirtier than we're used to seeing. He gets on the ground. You know, he's not just taking it easy more. He's like, I'm going to kill this guy. He's really annoying me. And he's trying to take him out, you know?
As much as people like to deny it, killing 10, as I mentioned in previous videos, does not mean you are not going all out. You can have killing intent while still holding back. As, once again, the analogy of Carnage holding back while still trying to kill someone, for example. And there's several other analogies of this in fiction, too. And Adam never retracted the holding back stuff. Please watch the full interview before you make stupid shit like this. Anyways, keep in mind Kong is at his peak. He's obviously above his Skull Island self, which the comic makes, which Kingdom Kong makes obvious, and obviously he's not as strong as GvK Kong with stuff like the Beast Club, which enhances his strength. But as much as people like to use the statements which imply that the fucking younger he is, the stronger he is, which does not make sense, unless you think that Skull Island Kong is stronger than GvK Kong, which is just not only according to Kingdom Kong, but the art book and the film itself wrong, then you do not believe that Kong is in a weaker state. Anyways, as well as the fact that the adrenaline that people seem to like to glaze so much has obviously wore off due to the sedation has worn off essentially. As for obvious reasons in this fight, he is not tired, sleepy, or calm, which by definition, if you are sedated, you are. And keep in mind, just after Kong sees Godzilla, he essentially shits himself. And he gets fear hacks and admits inferiority, he just admits inferiority outright. And even when they're not in water, Kong's punches just can't really harm Godzilla other than slightly staggering him back or hitting him off guard. Otherwise, Godzilla is shown that with a single claw slap that he can easily just floor Kong. And the atomic breath is something that Kong needs to avoid or he will die, which the novel just outright states. We also know in general, even at this point, considering his holding back state and his weakened state, that he is the stronger monster. Also, don't know where people get the idea that Kong knocked Godzilla out here with a headbutt. That's something called headcanon. Headcanon or whatever the fuck you want, but that's not what happened in the film. Neither is this stated. He knocks Godzilla back a bit. Congratulations. Then we go to round 2, where it's actually noted that Kong now has the environmental advantage and has a charged axe from the start, as the axe was charging in Hollow Earth, and we visibly see that it is glowing even at the start of the fight and when he picks it up. Yet once again, we still know by this point, with the charged axe and with Kong's environmental advantage, Godzilla is still the stronger and superior Titan. And not only see this fight that he can effortlessly throw and drag around Kong, we see how Kong's base strikes can't really do anything to Godzilla other than stagger him back. And this is consistent, as a 2 times charged axe gets shoved into Godzilla's leg as the atomic breath charged it again earlier. And it does not go bone deep. It gives him a little cut, but he very quickly reacts and very quickly disarms Kong of the axe. He doesn't seem to take much damage from it other than the cut. And once again, people say it goes bone deep, which is headcanon. And he spams his atomic breath right after this, which logically should be weaker than him charging it normally. He's not putting as much energy into it. And according to the novel, a direct hit would just mean death for Kong, which is why Kong avoids it like the fucking plague. We then see a simple graze from this spammed atomic breath, leaving a permanent scar and flooring him for a good moment as Godzilla chuckles again. Once again, the only opponent that Godzilla fucking chuckles at. I think that's pretty good evidence for why he's holding back in these first 2 encounters. Then Kong, with now a 3 times charged axe, as he got another charge, hits him in the mouth according to the people who worked, according to Greg, and it only dazed him, leaving no injuries whatsoever. And in fact, according to Adam, the only thing Kong did to him up this point was just piss him off enough to where he stopped toying with Kong, got serious, and just makes a fucking fool out of him. Even when Kong strikes him in the gills, it does not do anything to him, and he stands there and takes it. And this was to the point where at the end, the human characters just thought Kong was just done, if not for Godzilla sparing him. Then, by this point of the film, we learn that half the strength of his third of the film counterpart, so below 50% for sure. And he's physically and mentally exhausted. Yet not only are the human characters confident even during the Hong Kong fight that he would rip Mecha to shreds, as well as the human characters stating that Godzilla and Ghidorah are above Mecha, and as the analysis says that Ghidorah is above everything but Godzilla. It also seems to say that they also doubt the mech's strength outright and don't think it can really do anything to Godzilla. This also applies for Kong, by the way. And even we see, going back to the mech, that in their first initial class, Godzilla overpowers the mech, and the mech can not only not pierce skin,
He was going to dispatch Godzilla in the same way that Godzilla killed the Muto in the first film by blowing an atomic breath down his throat. In retrospect, I think it's probably the only way just about that I can imagine Godzilla actually going down, because his skin is impenetrable. I think the only way you can get in there is blow his guts out, and I think Mechagodzilla was really close to doing it.
Nor do any significant damage to him. Even in this half-strength state, Godzilla is once again later able to drag the mech as well as stalemate his beam. Which, to be fair, according to the novel, is equal to the one he used to drill the Earth, so he's in fact holding back when he goes into the Earth. And it's even, according to Adam, debatable that it would have, like, the kiss of death would have killed him.
I think Mechagodzilla comes close. I think maybe if he had blown that red beam down his throat, Muto style, that would have done him up, but potentially.
Who knows? We don't know what Godzilla's inside is made of. I mean, it might be just as strong, so who knows?
And since he seems to think that Godzilla's insides are just strong as his outsides, and according to him, his skin is just outright fucking impenetrable to Mechagodzilla and everyone else. And at the very least, we know that a full-powered Godzilla would have won. And his beams would have just ripped through Mecha if it's a prolonged blast, and he would have overpowered the proton scream. This is consistent with this Godzilla using the half-strength beam compared to the start of the film's beam, essentially giving Kong a one-time charged axe that treads through the mech like fucking butter. And while Godzilla can tank a 3 times charged axe by a non-fatigued Kong. And if you want to say Kong and Mecha are physically like relative, and Kong is relative to Mecha in this weakened state, more power to you. That just means Godzilla is just way, way more above. So essentially, at the very, very least, the weakened Godzilla at the start of GvK would shit on Mecha, more or less an actual full power version like G2019. So after this, well, Godzilla 2021 is definitely a strong Titan. The main problem with his strength is he does not really compare to some previous and future versions of Godzilla, and also some previous and future antagonists like Shimu and Ghidorah. And since essentially the only semi-powerful Titans that are alive at this time are like Kong, Mecha, and Rodan. And very obviously, neither any 3 of them compared to Godzilla, even in this state in the film. So Godzilla 21, while strong in his own right, is not as strong as some may think.